Rahul's deceptive and discreet inquiries into the true identity of the Paki girl did not go unnoticed by his white girlfriend. Emily had already begun to suspect her boyfriend's resolve from the day she went with him to the jail to visit his aunt. She suspected that Rahul would cover all bases and investigate all his auntie's claims. Emily had every motivation to prevent his interest toward that direction. She had no illusions about her status if the Paki girl turned out to be Miss World and had $100 million in the bank. If all of these realities were to materialize, she would be dropped like a hot potato, and her prized fiancé would not even remember her name. Sadly, Emily had already noticed Rahul's increasingly disinterest in her. He no longer bothered to show her around the city. He no longer took her to expensive restaurants and had refused to go out clubbing on the weekends. When she insisted they go out clubbing the following weekend, he told her to go alone. When she decided to go to the dance bar club all alone, she was shocked by his indifference. What troubled her even more was that he was perfectly aware that an unescorted young, foreign girl like herself would be continually harassed by drunken males. Emily came to the reality that for a fact, Rahul's priorities had changed. He was no longer interested in sex with her and she had to beg and manipulate him to show any interest in sex at all. That night, Emily went to the nightclub all alone and did not return until late afternoon the following day. She didn't know until afternoon that she had been picked up by a black African boy and spent the night with him in a cheap motel. The previous night, Emily became so drunk and drugged and remembered nothing of what had happened to her. When she surfaced from her alcohol and drugs, she was shocked to see an ugly black boy lying fully naked by her side. She couldn't believe her eyes that she agreed to go from the dancing club with such an unbelievably monstrous boy. She immediately jumped out of the small bed and fled out of the motel room as if she had discovered a gorilla was sleeping by her side. When she got back home she expected a big fight with her jealous boyfriend. She was surprised and saddened by his reaction, or lack thereof. He just looked at her blankly as though she was a stranger. He didn't say a word to her and Emily said nothing to him either and went directly to the bedroom and fell asleep. When she woke up, it was evening. She came out of the bedroom into the living room barefoot. She entered the living room without a sound and was shocked to see her boyfriend masturbating in front of his mother's computer. She saw that he was watching a video of a girl who was half naked in a swimsuit. She looked like a girl in a beauty contest. She immediately connected the dots and realized that they were both watching the same smelly burqa girl who came to their apartment in America. Along with her boyfriend not caring if she was alive or dead and having to actively stimulate him to have sex with her, this final humiliation and deception drove her to hysterics. Her anger blinded her and reason left her. She picked up a chair made out of wood and ran toward her boyfriend and brought it down across the back of his head. Rahul, being struck, fell off his chair bleeding profusely. Emily jumped on top of his body, straddled him and began to beat him left and right. Somehow, Rahul managed to push his crazy girlfriend off of him and stood up. Emily followed suit and started attacking and punching him again. Rahul did not want to hit her and tried avoiding her blows by restraining her. When Emily picked up another plastic chair and smashed it on his shoulder, he decided to fight back. It was now becoming a matter of life or death. At first, Rahul did not hit his girlfriend back because he thought that he was still in America. He knew that, in the Western countries, hitting a woman was a crime and a huge social faux pas. Everyone would side with the victim and the aggressor would usually end up in jail. As the beating continued, with fists raining on him, the sight of his own blood on her hands reminded him that he was no longer in America. After taking a few punches to the mouth, Rahul started to fight back and did not stop until he had floored her. Although she had fallen down, Emily continued to curse and berate her boyfriend, using every curse word that came into her mind. Rahul tolerated her abusive backlash until Emily called his late mother a fucking whore. Something in him snapped and he started to pummel her senseless. Emily started screaming at the top of her lungs to the point where Rahul paused his frenzied attack. He did not stop because he was afraid of the police, rather, he knew that in India, a man would be killed by the neighbors if caught beating a woman. Emily was not one to give up. The moment the beatings stopped, she reached up, pulled him by his shirt and sank her teeth into his face. He tried grabbing her shoulder and pushing her away and pulling her by her hair hoping to dislodge her. Nothing seemed to unclamp her hold on him. She was like a piranha or a pesky mosquito out for blood. Being the stronger one, he punched her in the side of the head and eventually managed to beat her down again. He fell on top of her, only to have to deal with her flailing legs. Rahul took stock of the situation and decided that he should flee. He managed to run to his mother's bedroom and lock himself inside. Emily chased after him and started banging on the bedroom door, daring him to come out and man up. Rahul told her that he was not going to come out until she left his mother's house and got out of his life forever. Emily threatened to go to the police and complain about the brutal way he beat her up. Rahul told her to go to the police or go to hell, in either case, he did not care. He told her that she was no longer his girlfriend and he had no interest in being with her anymore. He irritated her more by adding that he was going to respect the will of his mother and marry his cousin's sister, Aphrodite Krishna Khan. This did not have the desired effect. Instead of his opponent giving up and raising the white flag, Rahul's open confession only intensified the war. Not only was he caught masturbating to a Miss World video, he was now going to marry her. If the bedroom door was not locked, Emily might have killed him. She knew that he was not likely to open the door and come out and face her, so Emily decided to go to the police. She decided to send him to jail for daring to raise his hand to her. She had bruises and lacerations all over her body from her encounter with him. Looking the part of the assault victim, Emily left the house and hailed the first taxi driver that came her way. She asked the driver to take her to the nearest police station. The taxi driver was shocked to see her torn clothing and the bruising to her face. Afraid she might die in his taxi, he lost no time in getting her there. At the police station, Emily complained that someone had raped her and tried to kill her. She neglected to mention that the person was her boyfriend and that she had equally battered him. She thought the police might not take her complaint seriously if she said that she was raped by her Indian boyfriend. Emily decided to get Rahul into trouble with the law by claiming that he had raped her. As soon as she filed her complaint, the police inspector in charge sent out a police truck full of cops. He ordered them to arrest the suspect and bring him in, cuffed and restrained. When the policeman came back after less than half an hour along with the so-called dangerous criminal, the police inspector could not believe his eyes. The police inspector told Emily that since he had joined the police force since a young cadet, he had never seen someone beaten up to this extent. At first, he thought that Rahul was attacked by his angry neighbors for beating up his girlfriend. His officers told him none of the neighbors were present on the scene and they found the front door of the home opened and Rahul was locked in a bedroom afraid to come out. Furniture was broken everywhere like there had been a big fight and there was blood leading to the bedroom where they found Rahul a bloody mess. He told them his girlfriend attacked him for no reason at all. He thought maybe she was mad because he didn't want to go out drinking with her. When the police inspector questioned Emily about what had happened, she tried to wriggle her way out of it by saying she was driven to violence because she caught him having computer sex with a burqa girl on the internet. The police inspector confronted Emily with the first statement she filed. He said to her, "In your first statement you claimed that you had been beaten up and raped by someone and now in your second statement you say that you started beating on your boyfriend because you caught him having cyber sex with a girl on the internet." When she could not justify her two contradictory statements, the police inspector refused to arrest her boyfriend. He decided to send both of them to the hospital for treatment and considered the matter a domestic dispute. He told them that they could solve their dispute in a small claims court. Emily insisted that her boyfriend should be arrested for beating her. The inspector said it was a case of mutual combat and there was insufficient evidence either way. He refused to arrest Rahul because he had far more serious matters to attend to. Rahul accepted the fair decision of the police inspector and was taken in a police car to the hospital. Emily, on the other hand, was far from satisfied and refused to leave the police station and continued to argue and fight with the police inspector. She accused him of taking sides with her boyfriend. When the inspector remained unmoved by her allegations and inexpressive, she began to curse him out, which made him very angry. He jumped up from his desk and threatened to lock her up if she did not leave immediately. Emily hit the table with her fist and yelled a phrase in Hindi and called him, "Mother chut." This phrase loosely translated means "your mother pussy." However, in Western street language it can be put as "your mother is a fucking hooker." An Indian will kill you if you call him that disgraceful phrase. Emily had learned that particular phrase from her boyfriend and knew what it meant. The inspector got up from his chair and slapped her in the face. Emily retaliated with a slap of her own. The police inspector had never heard of any police officer being slapped inside a police station before, and that too by a woman. His officers stationed nearby were startled. He was understandably angry but controlled his rage. He smiled at her and instructed one of his officers to place her under arrest for assaulting an officer of the law in his duly appointed position. Emily remained in lockup for 2 hours. She received no medical treatment for her injuries during that time. While her injuries were not life-threatening, the pain was acute. In the beginning, she resisted arrest and demanded to be allowed to go to the hospital for treatment. The police inspector, still seething with the humiliation and embarrassment of being assaulted in front of his officers by a woman, ignored her request and kept her in detention until late evening. At 8 o'clock, she was told that she was going to be transferred to the women's jail. When she reminded the new police inspector in charge about her injuries and her need to be sent to the hospital, he told her that the women's jail had medical facilities and a duty nurse. The officer she had assaulted has already finished his shift and left for the day. However, before he left he whispered a few words in the ear of one of those who witnessed the assault. Emily believed the new police inspector and followed a couple of cops to their police car. The American girl did not know that she had been kidnapped until the police car started to speed up to 120 km per hour driving out of the city. When she saw the lights of the city fading away, Emily asked the cops where they were taking her. Both of the cops pretended to be poor in English and ignored her questions. Nevertheless, Emily continued to talk to them in English and demanded to know where they were taking her. When neither of them answered her questions, she began to scream at them. The cops made fun of her in Hindi because they knew that she was restrained and unable to do anything but rant and scream. When her shouting did not get the desired response, Emily began to jerk her body violently. Her antics made them poke fun at her even more and they began to laugh hysterically. By now, Emily had to come to terms that her two abductors might take her to a secluded place and rape or kill her, or both. She tried everything she could in order to change the course of events. Emily regretted ever going to the police station. The events she was about to face would be 1,000,000 times greater than her boyfriend using her as a punching bag. She realized that she could do absolutely nothing to prevent what was going to happen to her. There was nothing she could do to stop these evil Indian scums from climbing atop her body, emptying their filth, then brutally murdering her. If she had a gun and her hands were free, she would have shot herself in the head and ended it all. Emily was an atheist and for her God had never been real. Yet, that day, she found herself praying earnestly for the first time, asking for deliverance and help. After an hour's drive, the car lurched off the highway into a roughly hewn country lane. Emily began to bounce around in the rear of the car, which was devoid of seats, hitting and sliding into practically every hard projection in the passenger compartment. She began to scream when her body started hitting the roof of the small vehicle, and when it rolled to a stop, she found herself head over heels and somewhat sluggish by the repeated blows. The cops emerged from the car and then forcibly dragged her out. Emily thought her time had come. She continued to scream and beg them to spare her life. She decided to choose the lesser of the two evils confronting her and hence began to bargain with her kidnappers. On her knees she began to plead with them, "Please, please, I'll give you whatever you want. Just please don't hurt me. Okay, if you want to rape me I won't say anything, but please don't kill me. I promise I won't tell anyone or press any charges against you." "Shut up, chutia pussy. Why did you call our boss mother chut?" shouted one of the two cops. Emily saw that the Indian cops did indeed speak English. "I am sorry, sir. It was a mistake and I was very angry they didn't punish my boyfriend for hitting me. I promise I will never do that again. Please don't kill me. I told you I will give you whatever you want, if you want to have sex with me. Just please don't hurt me." "Have sex with you, chutia?" shouted the same cop while laughing at the top of his voice. "Your chut vagina is as big as a well. Who wants to have sex with your big chut? You started opening your chut to every man from the age of 12. How many sticks have you opened your legs wide open for? Your chut so big, you could fuck a leg. Who wants to fuck a big chut like that?" Emily had never been that insulted in all her life. She feigned ignorance and continued to barter for a compromise. "Whatever you want, I will do it. Please, even if you want a blowjob or do me in the back, I won't say anything, just please don't kill me, I don't want to die. We can get a 16-year-old virgin girl tonight if we want to have sex," said the other cop. "Why should we go for a white woman whose pussy and ass are as big as the mouth of a whale, when we have all the young, beautiful Indian girls we can choose from? We have not brought you here to fuck you or kill you. We want to teach you a lesson that you will remember all your life. We want to show you what we do to women who call our boss mother chut and tramps that dare to slap an officer of the law and defy the authority and laws of our nation." Emily was surprised when she heard that the cops did not want to rape or kill her. Now she could only wonder what kind of punishment they had in store for her. What could be crueler than rape and murder? She stopped her protest and squirming around, thinking that passive compliance would put her in a better position to escape. The two cops continued their snickering and gave nothing away. She would just have to wait and see what her punishment would be. At first, the two cops tried to undress Emily, but the ropes around her legs and hands made that very difficult. So they made her lie on her stomach and then sat on her. One sat on her back and the other one on her legs. The one who was sitting on her back untied her hands. Then, he pulled off her t-shirt. The other one removed the ropes from her legs and eased off her jeans. Emily now wondered whether the assurance they had given her earlier was just to trick her into being docile. Why would they want to undress her unless they were going to rape her? She remained quiet because she knew that she was entirely at their mercy. After removing her shirt and jeans, one of them ripped off her bra and the other removed her underwear. She was now naked in the humid, fetid, night air, lying naked on the ground. After that, the cops stood up and ordered her to follow suit. One of them collected all her clothes and looked at her for some time, evaluating his canvas. Then, he brought her clothes to his face and smelled them. He removed them quickly from his face. He covered his nose and remarked to his partner, "She smells like a dead rat. I wonder how that stupid Indian boy sleeps with her. I can't sleep at night if such a funky girl was lying beside me in bed." The other cop said to his colleague, "If her clothes smell like a dead rat, you can imagine what her chut smells like. It must stink and smells like a sewer plant. She is like a public washroom who allows every man to urinate inside her." Emily had never felt so humiliated before. If she had a gun, she would not hesitate to shoot both of them. Having neither a gun nor an advantage over them, she just remained silent and hoped for the best. The one who collected her clothes started to climb a tall tree. When he reached the uppermost branches, he hung her underwear on the branches of the tree and came down. Then, he climbed up another tall tree and did the same with her bra. Oddly, he retained her shirt and jeans. Listen, stinky girl. We call this the lion jungle. It has lions and tigers and many other wild animals. If you want to survive until morning, then you must climb up a tree and hide yourself from those wild beasts. There are many poisonous snakes and scorpions too. The other cop said cynically, there is a kind of poisonous snake in this place, and if it bites you, it will turn you from a white girl into a black girl. When your family claims your corpse, they will probably think that you are a negress. His colleague gave Emily another piece of advice: don't waste your time. Start climbing right away. The moment we leave, you are basically fresh meat. You are going to regret not taking our advice. By then, it will be too late. Don't try to run after our car or venture out alone in this dangerous place. Just stay in your tree and sit there until morning. It should be safe to come down then. Emily did still not believe that the cops were not interested in harming her. They probably were not going to rape her, but they were definitely planning something horrid. She could not believe that human beings could be so cruel to the extent of thinking up such an extreme punishment for what was simply a minor hysterical episode. She knew that she could not spend a minute alone in the jungle with the danger of wild beasts looming all around her. It was like nothing she had experienced before. All sorts of thoughts were running through her head. The moment she noticed the two cops leaving her and heading towards their car, she started to run after them. She pleaded for mercy and clemency. She implored them not to abandon her in the middle of nowhere. Before she could reach them, they had entered the police vehicle and drove away. She chased their car for a few minutes before she gave up. As the lights of the car receded into the distance, she was gradually immersed into a sea of darkness, and her vision started to glaze over with a darkness she was not accustomed to. She began to panic and tremble. She had never been so frightened before. From the increasingly hungry mosquitoes to the rivulets of sweat trickling off her body, she was acutely aware of all her discomfort in what was basically open season, only she was the game being hunted. With her eyes darting around, Emily remembered the warnings she had been given. The two policemen had specifically told her about poisonous snakes and dangerous wild beasts. Alarmed by the idea of being bitten by a venomous snake or mauled by an animal, she decided that climbing up a tree was obviously her best option. She had never climbed a tree before. The tree trunk was rough and made it hard for her to climb. Moreover, being naked, it left her body with even more scrapes, lacerations and cuts than she had ever had in her life. She hated herself and hated the day she was born. She regretted her decision to follow her Indian boyfriend to his country. She knew that whatever she did in order to prevent him from forsaking her and marrying an Indian girl was completely futile. She had lost him today, and now she would probably have to pay with her life for her bad decisions. Emily managed to climb a tree at a painfully slow rate, continually slipping. Nearing the top of the tree, she found a reasonably strong branch that could support her weight and clutched it like a monkey hanging between heaven and earth. She hoped that it was high enough. It took her only moments to realize that she might not be able to stay awake throughout the night, clutching a branch. Her survival was now dependent on her ability to stay awake. Falling asleep would mean sliding off the branch and, with her luck, landing on a snake or a wild beast. That was if the fall didn't kill her first. Emily felt a little more relieved to be out of reach of the snakes and lions and other wild beasts, but now she had to deal with the myriad of insects feasting on her body. Without a stitch of clothing on her, she began to suffer bites all over her body. She could not effectively fend them off for fear of losing her balance, and the sheer mass of ravenous insects was slowly driving her insane. She knew that if she fell down at such a height, she would probably be looking at a broken neck. Emily had never expected in her life to sink to such a deplorable state. She was naked and wounded, and her body was full of bruises and cuts. Her flesh was tortured by millions of insects and mosquitoes. With the sword of Damocles hanging over her head, her heart was pounding out a frantic rhythm that only she could hear in her head. Strangely enough, she found herself wishing that the two cops would return and get it over with. She would gladly give her body than have to deal with being eaten alive by mosquitoes. Once again, Emily remembered God and prayed from her heart for a merciful death or a miracle rescue. If she knew how to break her own neck and make sure she was dead, she would have given it a shot. For all her medical training, she now asked the Almighty for euthanasia rather than to have to attempt suicide. She was afraid of dying a painful death. She just wanted to die peacefully and quickly. Shortly after her second prayer, Emily saw a dim light in the distance. It looked like a light from a home in the jungle. The fear of wandering around in the presence of wild beasts and poisonous snakes kept her firmly rooted on her roost. When the lights appeared to grow bigger and draw closer, she realized that they were vehicle lights coming her way. She waited until she was positive of what she was seeing before shimmying down the tree, losing even more skin in the process than climbing up. Gritting her teeth and bearing the pain, she made it to the ground and hit the ground running, closing the distance between her and the oncoming lights. The warning of the policeman long forgotten, self-preservation was driving her, poisonous snakes and wild beasts be damned. Emily came out of the wilderness at exactly the right time. She emerged out of the jungle stark naked, latticed with scratches and covered in jungle rubble. The driver of the truck, superstitious as they all were, could be forgiven for expecting to see any kind of strange animal or ghost at that late hour. However, he was not prepared to encounter Tarzan's female counterpart, with no loincloth at that. The white creature that suddenly materialized in front of him looked wild-eyed and deranged. Her hair was disheveled and her features hard and twisted. She bore scratches and was covered in blood and scabs. The driver could see her two breasts dangling in front of her chest as if they were two small white balloons full of water. Her black pubic hair concealed her private parts and she was doing jumping jacks trying to get his attention, as if that was even necessary. If the driver hadn't stiffened up in fear, jamming on his brakes, he probably would have run her over in his truck and tried to get away from the ghostly apparition. Emily thought that the driver saw her and stopped his truck to pick her up. Without bothering to explain her bizarre situation or asking his permission, she ran to the passenger side and pulled the door of the truck open and jumped in beside the dumbstruck Indian man. Emily felt happy and overjoyed. She felt as if God himself had come down from heaven in his chariot of fire to rescue her from Satan the dragon. She knew that a few minutes ago when she had closed her eyes in earnest and prayed to God, he heard her plea and sent down his angel to rescue her. She closed her eyes and offered a short prayer of thanksgiving to God and then looked excitedly at the driver. He didn't seem to understand English and his silence led her to assume that he only spoke Hindi. It took the driver a few minutes to come back to his senses. He knew that a white female creature had climbed into his truck and was sitting beside him. His childhood was filled with tales of demons and ghosts, and the many evils they would bring with them. He tried to remember what it was he had to do to protect himself, but his mind drew a blank. He heard that Satan could transform himself into any kind of earthly creature. For that reason, he concluded that the buck-naked white female sitting in his truck was a satanic manifestation of sorts. He thought that, if he attempted to kick her out of his truck or fight her off, he might be struck dumb or worse, transformed into a ghost. Therefore, he concluded that the wise thing to do in a difficult situation as this, was to either try to appease the evil one or pretend as if no one was there. After coming to a wise conclusion, the driver let go of the brake and began to drive his truck again. Rahul spent one night in the hospital, receiving treatment and staying under observation. Discharged the following morning, he left the hospital and headed home. Then, he packed up his bags and left the house. When he reached the garden gate, he wrote a note to his ex-girlfriend. In his note, he informed her that he was flying back to America and that their friendship was over. He advised her not to look for him and to consider his decision final. He concluded his note by saying that he was going to leave her passport, ticket, bags, and whatever money left for her with his mother's lawyer. He concluded his note by telling her to go to the lawyer's office and collect her documents and effects. After leaving the house, Rahul went to his mother's lawyer and gave him the items to hold in trust. He told him that he had to return to America for urgent matters and he would return in a few months. After that, Rahul revisited his detained auntie for the third time. He apologized to her for wrongly accusing her. After his auntie had accepted his apologies, Rahul told her that he did a thorough search on the internet and checked the documents held by her lawyer. Everything that she had said about her daughter was true. Then, he told her that he had broken off his relationship with his white girlfriend. After that, Rahul told his auntie briefly how her daughter came to be in jail and who was behind her arrest. He put the entire blame on his American girlfriend. Finally, he said that he was returning to America to see about speaking to the police and confess that she was innocent and that his girlfriend had falsely accused her out of jealousy. Although, Rahul did not tell his auntie that his primary interest in her daughter was selfish and selfing, Rani Krishna could read between the lines. Before she sent him with her blessings, Rani specifically warned her nephew not to allow her daughter to return to India. Irrespective of what may happen to her, he was to ensure that she did not return to Mumbai. Her final instruction was for him to keep Aphrodite with him until she came to America. Then, Rani said to Rahul, "If you are interested in marrying my daughter and if she agrees to marry you, then you should neither touch her nor marry her until I am present." Rahul responded to his auntie by saying, "I am more than interested. I have already fallen in love with Aphrodite and I will marry no one else except her." When she heard his cabal to marry her daughter, Rani felt very pleased, blessed her nephew, and sent him in peace. The truck driver who picked Emily up was arrested as soon as he reached the first police checkpoint on the highway. He was detained under the charges of kidnapping, raping, and imprisoning an American girl. None of the policemen at the checkpoint could speak English. Emily's explanations were useless. Who was going to believe that the poor soul was in fact her savior and guardian angel? Upon questioning, the unfortunate driver narrated how he came across a naked white girl in the middle of the jungle. Obviously, in this case, fact being stranger than fiction, he was promptly arrested. The policeman provided Emily with an old blanket and showed her how to cover up her nakedness. Emily understood their kind concern, used the blanket as a sari, and somehow managed to cover almost all of her breasts, buttocks, thighs, hips, and other private parts. After that, Emily along with the detained truck driver were escorted in a police car and sent to police headquarters for further processing. At police headquarters, Emily cleared the truck driver from the charges of kidnapping and raping her. Then, she made out a formal complaint against the 2 Indian policemen who had kidnapped her from the police station. Emily used hundreds of Western phrases and legal jargon in her statement. She intended to make them pay to the fullest extent of the law. She claimed mental abuse, emotional torture, verbal abuse, assault, gender discrimination, molestation, sexual exploitation, exposing her to imminent danger, excessive use of violence, abuse of authority, premeditated murder, etc., etc., etc. The police inspector who was taking her statement had never heard of those crimes in his life and hence he understood none of them. Therefore, after patiently noting the claims in her statement, he asked her a straightforward question and he was expecting the answer to be in the affirmative. "Did they beat you or rape you, ma'am?" He was shocked when Emily said no, therefore, he doubted the entire kidnap and rape scenario. He could not believe that 2 Indian policemen would take a young woman out of the city and strip her naked and then take her clothes and leave her to sleep up a tree with wild beasts in the jungle. He concluded that the white girl had probably taken a dose of hallucinogenic drugs 12 or so hours before questioning, the effect of which caused her to strip off her clothes and run away from her hotel. She eventually ended up her drug-fueled night in the jungle where the driver found and rescued her. After giving her strange and unbelievable statement, Emily was asked to name the police station she was detained in, the police inspector who locked her up, the 2 policemen who allegedly kidnapped her, took her to the jungle, stripped her, stole her clothes, and left her fully naked to be eaten alive by wild beasts. She said that she did not know any of their names. She said further that she could only give descriptions of the policemen. When she gave their descriptions, the police inspector made fun of her and told her that the descriptions she gave would fit any Indian man, even him. Emily could not even name the police station where she went to lodge a complaint against her Indian boyfriend. Without any discernibly intelligent answer from her, leading to the identity of her alleged kidnappers and abusers, the police inspector made the charges against unknown persons. Emily was very upset when she learned that the local courts would in all probability dismiss her complaints for lack of evidence. She was also reminded that the backlog of cases would probably stretch out the resolution of her case, if any, to more than a year. Once again, Emily was tempted to hit the table again and call the police inspector mother chud and slap him, but experience had taught her in no uncertain terms that the Indian police were not to be messed with. Emily had been boiling over the last 24 hours. Still nursing the need to take out her anger on someone, she headed back to her boyfriend's house so that she could vent on him. She was yearning to tell him what had happened to her because of him, and then she would beat him up again. This time, she learned her lesson. She would forsake the formality of making another police report and simply send him to the hospital with a permanent disability. Ironically, Emily knew that the only person able to help her identify her kidnappers and abusers would be Rahul. First, she wanted to find out from him the name and address of the police station he was called to. Then, she knew that her next step would be to go to that police station and find out the name of the police inspector who had locked her up. Through him, she expected she could find out the names of the 2 wicked policemen who took her to the jungle and tortured and abused her. All the wind went out of her sails when she reached the house. She found the note and read it. She bristled with anger, wondering what to do next. In her anger, she knew that if he happened to be standing in front of her, she would skin him alive and roast him over an open flame. She vowed that if she didn't get hold of him while in India, she would pursue him to the very ends of the earth to get satisfaction and revenge for him allowing those fucking Indian policemen to abuse her. Nevertheless, the note opened Emily's eyes to a sad reality. She realized she had to come to terms with the fact that her India trip was a total disaster. Although she had quarreled with her boyfriend and filed charges against him, she had not expected that their quarrel would end their long association. She thought that it was mere lust that led her boyfriend to masturbate while watching the video of Miss World. She had actually expected him back, repentant and apologetic after he had realized his mistake. His termination note felt like a dagger in her heart and exactly what she had feared would happen if he returned to India unaccompanied. Even her presence could not stop her Indian boyfriend from forsaking her and going for the new Miss World. Emily came to the sad realization that her Indian boyfriend was just using her to satisfy his lust. She felt as if she was a wad of used toilet paper he had just flushed down the toilet.